My sleeper is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. Now, listen, this is a sleeper for the folks who are just coming out and getting ready to draft. If you've been in the weeds, if you've been there with the four of us drafting best ball drafts left and right, you know who Brian Thomas is. He was drafted 23rd overall by the Jacksonville Jaguars, but right now he's going off the board as the 45th wide receiver. But here's the thing. Then this is why I preface this by saying some of you might not know. If you go to best ball drafts on Underdog, Brian Thomas right now is going around the late 6th round. If you go to other areas like Sleeper, even ESPN has him going as like 11th round, late 10th round pick. So some of you might not be ahead of the curve on Brian Thomas. I'm telling you that you need to be. You know, we're going to have 22 vacated targets, 22% of the vacated targets from the Jacksonville Jaguars, that being Calvin Ridley, who is now off to Tennessee, who Pete just spoke about. You know, I like him a lot. This depth chart is not impenetrable. You know, right now we have Christian Kirk there. Christian Kirk's dealing with some injuries. We think he'll be okay. Then there's Gabe Davis, who I know Gabe Davis has been definitely a DFS darling, somebody who we've always wanted to succeed out in Buffalo. I know Anthony would beat the Gabe Davis drum. I wouldn't be far behind him either. So I'm not even attacking him on that. But just him in Jacksonville trying to hold off Brian Thomas, I don't see that being a real problem. I think Brian Thomas is going to be somebody who's going to do well in this offense. I think when you look at the wide receivers that have gone in front of you, and again, I speak to you people who are just getting ready to draft now, who haven't done all the homework, who haven't been here since the season ended, since the confetti fell in the Super Bowl. We've all been here. That's why we're here for you. I mean, Brian Thomas is going to succeed in this offense. He's caught 3 or 4 targets for 93 yards in the preseason. You see the names like Marvin Harrison Jr. You see Malik Neighbors. You get hot and bothered. Those guys are very exciting, and they should be. I'm starting to sour on Marvin Harris's ADP. I'm more in line with the Malik Neighbors going a little bit later. Yes, Pete, I did say that. I am getting a little worried that the ADP is getting a little too high.
Watch yourself over there.
Even though, watch myself. You watch yourself. But right now, you got Brian Thomas Jr. going around guys like if we're talking about rookies, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman. I would rather have Thomas over both of those guys. And Anthony, I don't know if you're going to disagree with that because you're a Ladd McConkey guy, but I'd rather have Brian Thomas over both those guys. The only thing I would say, just as a disclaimer, I think he's going to have a good week 1. We're going to come at you with some DFS content. I like him in week 1. They're going to play the Dolphins. It's one of the highest scoring games in the week. I think he's going to produce there. Week 2 is going to be a problem. He's going to play the Browns. That's going to be an issue. We'll see what the Bills secondary looks like. That comes up in week 3. But beyond that, I think between the 22% of vacated targets from Calvin Ridley, I think from whatever injury Christian Kirk is dealing with, if he's at 100% to start the year, and competition at the depth chart, I like Brian Thomas Jr. And again, if you're drafting in a redraft, you're getting him later than you're getting him in best ball. So if any of you best ball drafters are saying this is stupid, you should look at what the ESPN ADP is, because it's almost double. So I'm going Brian Thomas Jr. I like this pick, and I'm very happy with it. Any thoughts from the masses?
Yeah. You bring up who the other rookies, you'll draft him over. I'm warming up on Brian Thomas. I still like Ladd McConkey more, but I will take Brian Thomas over Keon Coleman. That's where I kind of draw that line.
Sure.
If I'm drafting a rookie receiver inside of that, those few rounds, it's Ladd McConkey or Brian Thomas. My take on McConkey is I think he's going to lead that team in targets, where you have a little bit more target competition in Jacksonville, but in the same breath, I think the overall ceiling for Brian Thomas is higher than Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, I like Brian Thomas a lot too. I think there's a chance he could be the best receiver in this draft. And I like him over Odunze too, because his path is better. I mean, Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And then Brian Thomas led college football in touchdowns. He's just a guy that could take the top off the defense. I've been splitting it up with him and Ladd about 50-50. I like Ladd's situation a lot too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, Brian Thomas, just so much potential there in Jacksonville. I do think he's going to help that offense and help Trevor Lawrence this year.
So, and I asked this because I posted this poll today. Would you guys take Brian Thomas over Christian Watson? Because they're back to pretty close to back to back.
It depends what I'm doing with my teams.
Yeah.
If I had one draft, I'd probably go with Brian Thomas. But it's very close. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been doing so many teams with Jordan Love and Christian Watson. I kind of like that combo better with the quarterback and Christian Watson. But in a home league, you don't really need to stack as much as when you're playing in a tournament. But I think Thomas could easily be probably a better prospect than Watson overall. Considering his pedigree, playing in the SEC, Watson came out of what freaking Division II, was it? Or he was he didn't play for a big time.
I think he went the same place that no, it's
Trey
not the
Lance?
same place. Yeah,
Trey
that's
Lance,
what I thought. And Carson Wentz as well.
Right. North Dakota, South Dakota.
Yeah. For what it's worth, this poll got 299 votes, and Brian Thomas was 75% of the votes.
Wow.
Christian Watson was 25. I think that's a case of just like people buying into a little bit of the hype over the weekend.
Yeah, the preseason changes. Yeah. People see one catch from a guy or anything, and all of a sudden he's just gonna fucking run rampant through the league. It just changes everything so crazy.
It's a tough call.
All of a sudden, Ingram caught 2 touchdowns yesterday. He's going the third, fourth round. People just get giddy, man.
They do. I do think it's close. I think I still lean Christian Watson just because I think he has the highest upside. It's nothing against Brian Thomas. I love Brian Thomas this year. We talked about it a lot, Steve, but I just think Christian Watson has the highest ceiling just for this specific year. Next year, probably a completely different story. Brian Thomas is now year 2, and he's more developed at that point, and we're probably having a different discussion at that point.
I will say, if I'm in a best ball, I would go Christian Watson. Outside of that, then I would go Brian Thomas. So again, that's why I presented Brian Thomas here, because to me, it's more for the redraft guys, the guys and the gals that are coming out here to try and get the information that they need before their drafts, which is coming up this weekend, or before toe meets ball the week after, which is very exciting stuff.